So first, I want to highlight that the context of the summit was very much formed by the brutal Russian attacks, especially on civilian infrastructure, on the Ukrainian people. And so there was a very, very deep understanding that Russia only understands when we help Ukraine, that Russia is not deterred, and that we cannot be deterred either. And that from there's a direct link to some of the decisions that were announced both by allies, but also by NATO as an organization. And first and foremost of these is air defense. So it was very clear in our minds in the run-up to the summit, in the months before the summit, that air defense was absolutely a crucial component, that the ability of the Ukrainian government to protect Ukrainian people was absolutely essential. And allies have worked over the past months, and the Secretary General has been extremely active in this regard to identify air defense assets, in some cases, complete air defense systems, in other cases, air defense systems that were compiled from different allies who had individual components. And so for us, air defense was, I wouldn't say maybe necessarily the number one priority, but certainly one of the top 2 or 3 priorities of what we wanted to deliver for Ukraine. And I only say it wasn't the number one priority because everything else was also a priority. So air defense was very front and center in our minds, and allies really stepped up with the additional announcements that were made. Then for the decisions that NATO had taken for Ukraine at the summit. We think of this, all of the decisions, and I'll go through them, but we think of all of the decisions as a coherent, comprehensive package. And it's a package that, and you've heard this word before, and I'll say it again, this package is a bridge. It's a bridge to membership. And what is in this package? There are actually quite a lot of components. Certainly central is the NATO security assistance and training for Ukraine. This is a major NATO command, which will be based in Germany and which henceforth will coordinate the provision of training, the provision and delivery within Allied territory of military equipment. And it will coordinate all of these logistics, all of this delivery of support of specifically military equipment, lethal and non-lethal, for Ukraine on Allied territory. It will consist just in the command portion of about 700 personnel. So this is an enormous effort. It's an enormous undertaking, but one that allies felt very strongly NATO needed to lead and NATO needed to be involved in. The other component of this support is then the alignment of all of this immediate support that we are providing to Ukraine now with the long-term development of the Ukrainian force. So this is both an immediate and a long-term command and a long-term effort. The next component of the package is what we are calling the financial pledge. And this is based on an analysis of what allies have been providing to Ukraine bilaterally so far, and a commitment to do at a minimum as much as that. So this is 40 billion per year euro of support to Ukraine, specifically for military assistance, for training, not including the economic support, not including the humanitarian aid, not including many other categories of support, but specifically to help Ukraine not only prevail, and I want to emphasize this additional point, it's not only to help Ukraine prevail, but help to defeat Russian aggression. The pledge is very clear in this as its purpose and its goal. And so 40 billion per year is a bare minimum, we consider. And so there is an intention that at all subsequent summits, until it's no longer necessary, allies will review and based on Ukraine's needs can readjust that amount, of course, For a great many allies, that amount is actually less than what they provide already. So this is, as I said, minimum baseline. Then, in addition to that, we've taken a number of additional decisions, including related to the expansion, the reinforcement of the NATO representation to Ukraine, so we can better support Ukraine and better work together, and the appointment for the first time of a senior representative to lead our office in Kyiv. And this is an important demonstration of political support. I've outlined some practical areas of work and support, and this is a very political effort to highlight how committed we are to helping Ukraine in this fight, but also for the long term. Then there were a myriad other decisions, and many of them are outlined in the NATO-Ukraine Council statement. I won't dive deeply into all of them, but just to highlight the establishment of the Joint Analysis, Training, and Education Center, which will identify and apply lessons learned from the war, including on resilience. So not only focused on battlefield lessons learned, but also the resilience of the civilian population, the critical infrastructure protection, all of these aspects as well. The work that we are doing together on procurement, on innovation, on capacity building, on through the comprehensive assistance package, and all the measures of support that we provide there. So the list is quite long, and I'm just mindful that we have a limited time to also discuss all of this. But I also want to highlight, because we've touched on membership, and allies have said that all of these decisions combined, decisions taken by allies individually, by NATO as an organization, and also, and this is very, very important, decisions taken by the NATO-Ukraine Council itself. All of these decisions constitute a bridge to Ukraine's membership in NATO. Allies have said Ukraine will be a member of NATO, Ukraine's future is in NATO, and that there's work that Ukraine will do, and we will do together with Ukraine, and we will support Ukraine on its path of irreversible membership in NATO. And so then what are some of these NATO-Ukraine Council decisions and some of this joint work that we are doing together? I want to highlight that in the 1 year since Vilnius, since we created the NATO-Ukraine Council, we have come so far in joint decision-making, in joint statements, in negotiated consensus in the NATO-Ukraine Council. And I don't know if it really is as obvious to everyone what an important departure it is from the way that we used to work together with Ukraine, where NATO took decisions and Ukraine was sometimes at the table and participated and contributed, but decisions were only ever taken by the NATO allies. Now we take decisions jointly. We take decisions on JTEC, the Joint Analysis, Training, and Education Center. The entire NATO-Ukraine Council statement was negotiated from start to finish together with Ukraine in the Council. And that also meant that Ukraine knew at a very early stage what the package was, what the deliverables were, what the measures of support were, and how we together were going to describe Ukraine's path to NATO. And these are very important changes from the way that we used to work before. So these are some of the highlights I wanted to, I'm just checking my notes in case I'd forgotten something truly essential, but I wanted to highlight for you in particular the breadth of the decisions, from air defense to the nearly 24 bilateral security agreements, to the financial pledge and the NATO security assistance and training, which really puts NATO support in a completely different scope, on a completely different long-term footing. And that's a significant sea change for NATO. So all of these decisions also with Ukraine together in the NATO-Ukraine Council, are pretty significant in our mind. We've worked very closely together with Ukraine in the past months to prepare all of these deliverables. I would say from my point of view, from my observation, this was a summit that delivered concrete, really tangible measures of support, which I do think is crucial at this stage. And with that, back to you. Дуже дякую.